Hey guys, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I am your host, Ryan Cartledge, and I'm really excited that you've decided to take time out of your busy schedules to come and hang out with us today. We are really grateful for you tuning in, and if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, we really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Hopefully you have subscribed so that you never miss an episode, but if not, or if you are new to the show, get yourself over to iTunes, Stitcher, animaltrainingacademy.com, or whatever it is you are listening to this podcast on, and hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We're bringing you today's episode on behalf of the Animal Training Academy, or ATA membership. If you like the conversations in these podcasts, then you are invited to continue them with like-minded people within the ATA membership area, which you can find out more about on the ATA website. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web classes, and a huge library of videos and projects to problem solve different training situations. And we are a very sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group, forums area, and WhatsApp chat groups. It's like Netflix for animal behavior nerds. So to find out more about membership and how you can join the community and carry on the conversation, visit www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click the membership button in the main menu. But we will get started on today's episode, where we're going to be talking to one Veronica Boutelle. Veronica is the founder of dogbiz, the dog pro industry's leading business consultancy, through which she has been helping dog trainers help dogs since 2003. She is the author of How to Run a Dog Business, Putting Your Career Where Your Heart Is, and The Business of Dog Walking, How to Make a Living Doing What You Love. She's also the co-author of Minding Your Dog Business, a practical guide to business success for dog professionals. And she writes on business topics for many dog training industry journals. Veronica is a sought-after speaker at conferences and dog training schools across the US and internationally. She's recently spoken to positive reinforcement trainers at conferences and seminars in countries as diverse as Chile, Spain, New Zealand, the UK, and Australia, including last year's APDT and Delta conferences in Australia. As a business owner before that, Veronica understands what it means to be a dog trainer firsthand, the daily worries about everything from client compliance to financial security, the unique challenges of a flexible schedule that requires evenings and weekends, and the struggle to balance clients and training with the complexity of running a business, and to balance all of that with a rich non-work life. Her background as a trainer, her business expertise, and her work as an educator put Veronica in a unique position to help professional dog trainers learn to become as skilled in business as they are as trainers. And that means more dogs' lives touched by positive training. So without further ado, it's my very great pleasure to welcome Veronica to the show today. Veronica, how are you?
I'm well, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute honor to have you on the guest. Thank you for taking the time to come and hang out with us. We really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
We're going to dive straight in today, Veronica, to the first question. Could you please tell everyone listening about your business, dogbiz, what it is, how it got started, and what it can offer the listeners of this podcast show?
Absolutely. Well, 15 years ago, I was director of behavior and training at the San Francisco SPCA, and part of my department was Gene Donaldson's Academy for Dog Trainers, of which I'm a graduate myself. And every year, we would watch 4 incredible groups of graduates leave the program, amazing trainers, amazing people, intending to go out there and make this enormous difference. And then we'd check back in with them and find out that it wasn't happening for them. They were going back to their old jobs, or they were taking part-time work in order to make ends meet, and were really disillusioned. And we realized that it wasn't that they couldn't train dogs. It wasn't that they didn't know how to work with people. It's that they didn't know how to run businesses. And this is it's a challenging industry. You come in, looking to change dogs' lives. You go through incredible programs like yours, Ryan. All these trainers out there looking to increase their skills and and learn to become dog trainers. But we all come into this from a place of altruism, not a place of entrepreneurialism. I mean, I know very few dog trainers who grew up thinking, oh, I can't wait to own my own business. I mean, most dog trainers own businesses because there aren't jobs for dog trainers. And so after watching this for a few years, I decided that, and we all kept saying, somebody should do something about this. And so when my time was finished at the SPCA, I decided that it was time. That was 15 years ago. And so we set out to create a company whose sole mission was to support positive reinforcement dog professionals in learning the business side of the very valuable skill set they have so that more people could benefit from that. So that's what we do.
It's cool, and great place to start with Jean Donaldson at San Fran SPCA. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So it must have been frustrating to some degree. You said you became disillusioned by the fact that you were putting all this hard work and effort and seeing amazing results from these trainers, and then to find out that they'd gone back to their day job.
Yeah, it really was, and it just it just really brought home for us that if dog trainers are going to be successful, they have to know the business side of things as well. And so when we started, we had sort of a vague notion of, well, how will we do this? My original background was in education, and so we started from sort of an educational standpoint of teaching people how to do this through seminars, through one-on-one consulting, which we still do. But it was interesting in the first few years, the number of times we were hearing clients say to us, oh, God, couldn't you just do that for me? Couldn't you just do that for me? And so over the years, we've continued to innovate and create products and services and things that allow us to help. We have clients who are very eager to really learn all of these business skills and get really good at them, and we love to help do that. And then we've also created a number of products and services to help people sidestep the pieces they'd really rather not do, so they can focus more on the dog training. As far as we're concerned, however the job gets done, it just needs to get done. We need to get positive reinforcement trainers in front of potential clients and make that connection so that they can make a difference in dogs' lives.
So that's quite a big difference. I remember when I was first starting my business and I was talking to a mentor of mine saying, I want to go and get marketing help. He's like, no, you have to do it yourself, Ryan, because otherwise you're going to misunderstand what the clients want and you're not going to be able to talk to them properly. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. In some ways, I agree with him in that there's a lot of business advice out there that's general enough that it applies to pretty much any industry. But that said, our industry is unique in a lot of ways, and it's a funky little niche, and it really does require different approaches to marketing. And so we kind of take a two-tiered approach. I mean, one, we look to educate clients and students about basic marketing principles and tenets and to understand a little bit about it. But we also recognize that, in any industry, no matter what you do, whether you work for someone else or you run a business, we don't all have every single skill set that we need. And part of being successful in life and in business is knowing when to bring somebody else in to do some work for you. And so we look to, find ways to help with that. One of the big things we've done around marketing is just trying to change perception about it, kind of change the approach and the idea. We really understand and empathize with dog trainers who do not want to be out there selling themselves and, singing their own praises and feeling like a carnival barker. I myself actually quit the Girl Scouts as a kid because I was so uncomfortable being forced to sell Girl Scout cookies. It's awful, putting yourself out there for potential rejection, and it just doesn't feel good for most of us. And so the main approach that we take to marketing inside this industry is education. It's community marketing, the idea of education as marketing. So, every dog trainer, we all share this mission of trying to get rid of the myths in our society about dogs and dog behavior. We all share this mission of educating dog lovers in order to improve their own lives and especially their lives with dogs. And so we really look for marketing approaches and projects that allow dog trainers to actively share their expertise in their communities, whether it's through putting out a print newsletter or creating adoption folders or behavioral wellness folders that go home with a dog and their new family, and provide education and tips for getting off on the right paw right from the beginning. Tip sheets in vet clinics and pet supply stores instead of brochures, so that we're not just saying, hey, we're here, we're actually doing good while we're raising awareness about our own businesses. And we find that kind of approach has a lot more kind of emotional and cognitive comfort, in our industry, because, it doesn't feel so bad to say, hey, I'm here, if you're doing good while while you're saying it. And so for some of our clients, that's been enough, and they're really comfortable running with that, and they have the writing skills to make it happen, and the time and the inclination. But for some people, they just don't. And whether it's, a lack of the skill sets needed, or whether it's the time issue, or just that they'd, really rather be doing other things. And so over the years, we've done things like, creating a marketing toolkit that has a lot of projects already pre-done, and it's just a matter of adding your brand to them, or our newsletter service, where we actually write our clients' newsletters for them, but make it look like the newsletters look like they're coming from their business. Things like that, where it doesn't have, you have to understand the project and how it works and why it works. And I really do agree with that advice that you were given, but you don't have to necessarily be the one who actually executes the project. I think it's just a matter of making sure that the projects that are being done for you, are really in line with your own ways of thinking and belief systems and the methodologies that you use and things like that, so that they feel authentic.
Yeah, well, I'm excited that we're getting this opportunity to make this podcast today, because I'm sure there's going to be listeners of the show that are possibly in situations that share similarities with me earlier in my business life. And to get that perspective, I think back then would have been really helpful for me. You said that most dog trainers start businesses because there's not jobs for dog trainers.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think the vast majority of our clients really would take a job if there was a job available. But you think about, we're starting to see some dog trainers come into the industry as a first career, which is a really exciting development, I think. But I think most of us have had one or two or three careers before we finally decide to give ourselves the gift of doing what we really love for a living. So we decide, I really want to work with dogs. I'm going to do this. We go to a training school, like your academy, for example. We build all these skills, and then we look around, and it's not like there are all kinds of job listings out there for dog trainers. They're very few and far between. And so if we're going to then take the skill set out there and make a living with it, that often means having to go out and do that on our own. And I think, unlike in some industries where you have you have people who grow up just deciding, gosh, I want to own my business. That's not typically the case for us. And so we end up coming at the work from, we're really focused on the dog training and not on the business aspect, which means that there aren't a lot of dogs for us to train because we haven't, gone out there and gotten the business. And we're also looking at it, as I said before, from a really altruistic standpoint, which means we come at the business from an altruistic standpoint, which means we tend to undercharge for our services. We're uncomfortable selling, and so we don't make the sales that we should. We're uncomfortable singing our own praises, and so we don't market. And therefore, these incredible skill sets that people have aren't used to their full potential. We don't get to help as many dogs as we could.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about for someone coming into this. I love what you said there, though. Give yourself that gift of doing what you want for a living.
I think it's an incredible thing. It's one of the things I love about what I do is working. You think about what it takes to do that. That's bold. It's a lot of guts, to say I'm going to go do what I love instead of something that seems more obviously lucrative. As I said, we're seeing more and more people come into this industry as a first career, but it's only just beginning to be seen as a viable career. And I think, most of us learn to be a little bit safer, to go into areas, to have have, where we can have a job and somebody can give us a paycheck on a monthly or weekly basis, and everything's just sort of set for us. I think deciding to go out on your own and create your own business is a really bold move. And I think especially deciding to pursue a passion for your career and your livelihood instead of something that just seems sort of safe and practical. I think it's incredible. And what's amazing to me is how many people do this who are uncomfortable doing it, that their passion's really driving them. And we work with people all the time who this whole idea of running a business is a really scary, intimidating thing. And yet they are out there figuring out how to do it anyway because they love dogs that much. And they're committed to themselves enough to do something that really feeds them instead of something that, that just gives them a paycheck. And so it's one of the things we love most about what we do is just the incredible caliber of the kind of people that we're dealing with. That we get to work with every day and to help make a difference in their lives so that they can turn around and do it for others.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening to you talking and imagining in my head the listeners of this podcast show getting inspired and lighting a fire up under there. I won't say that word.
I hope so. I really do, because it is scary. There's nothing. There's no way around that. It is an exhilarating and also very frightening thing to go out and create your own livelihood. But the doing of it is incredible. To have that kind of control over your own work life, and to be able to do something that you have that much passion for and that you care that much about. It really is an incredibly empowering thing. Yeah,
it's really resonating a lot with me and what my life's been like over the last few years. Just before we move on, we're going to talk more about some of these important things people need to consider when starting up a dog business. But I just wanted to discuss for people that might want, after this podcast, to learn a little bit more. You've got a couple of books out that they can easily purchase, and we mentioned them in the start of the podcast. Can you just run through those for people listening?
Yeah, we've got, so the place to start for I think most of your listeners would be How to Run a Dog Business, Putting Your Career Where Your Heart Is. And all of these books are published by Dogwise. You can get them through Dogwise, through Amazon, or through us as well. But that's kind of the blueprint book, the where to start if this is something that you're thinking about doing. Minding Your Dog Business was the follow-up to that. And so I think, you said if you're just going to pick one up, that's the How to Run a Business book is the one I'd pick up. And we cover everything from, the legal paperwork pieces and kind of the practical pieces to designing your services, to setting your rates and your policies, and marketing, and just about everything. And so that's sort of the comprehensive kind of step-by-step piece. For anyone listening who's interested in dog walking, in that case, I would go with The Business of Dog Walking, How to Make a Living Doing What You Love, because that's sort of the same thing, but for dog walkers. And that book is the companion text for our Dog Walking Academy program. And that Dog Walking Academy program for your Australian listeners is available. And we teach that in Australia. Alexis Davison of Scholars and Collars there in Adelaide teaches that class throughout the country in Australia. And she's a phenomenal instructor.
Fantastic. And we'll link to all of the stuff in the show notes as well if you guys want an easy place to go and find it other than using Google. Where is the best place for people to go and get these books? Is it Dogwise?
Yeah, dogwise.com is probably the most direct, and I believe all the titles are on Amazon as well. And you can also find them on our site at dogbizsuccess.com.
And I'm sitting here with my smartphone on my leg with How to Run a Dog Business loaded into the Kindle app on my phone. And
that was fast, Ryan.
No, I purchased it a couple of months ago now and been making my way through it. And yeah, it's a really easy read. So I highly recommend that to people. I loved hearing about all of that. Thanks for sharing everything so far, Veronica.
Oh, my pleasure.
So we talked about many different aspects in that first little segment of this podcast episode. What are some of the other really important things people wanting to start up a dog business or animal training businesses? And just tell us, are you doing other animal training businesses? What are the important things people need to consider?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is setting aside the time. It's so easy to set aside the time to learn the animal training aspect of it, but really making a commitment to set aside the same amount of time and some resources to learning the business side too, so that you can have the greatest impact possible. And part of that too, when in our consulting work, we about 50% of our clients are startups. They're just getting started in their businesses, and or even just looking at coming to us for kind of career counseling, kind of wanting to explore what a career in dogs might look like. The other 50% of our clients are already in business, and they've maybe been in business for a year or 10 years or even 20 years, and they're coming to us to solve problems or push things farther. We love both, but man, if you're just getting started, seek the help out early, because one of the things that is so valuable in that is that it's always such a pleasure for us to get to help people sidestep the common mistakes. And there are some doozies, and they are really common. As one example, one of the things we spend a lot of time with our clients who come to us as established businesses doing is raising their rates. One of the common trends in this industry is that we undervalue ourselves, and that we don't set our rates at a professional level. In fact, I was speaking about this at the last APDT conference. I did a talk about competing with the big boys or competing with traditional trainers. And one of the things that I hear everywhere I travel, doesn't matter whether I'm working with a client on the phone or I'm traveling around the world, one of the questions that we get hit with all the time is, why do my clients keep going to the traditional trainer down the street first and then coming to me afterward to fix whatever damage is done? And another big question that we get people coming to us with is, or just a need, is that they're not getting enough clients, right? They're not getting the clients, or they're not getting the conversions. And the first thing we look at to solve both those problems is rates. But we're not looking at it to see if rates are too high, because they're never too high. I've literally only once or twice in 15 years told a dog trainer, I think we need to pull your rates down a little bit. It's always that the rates are too low. And if you'll notice, typically the traditional trainers are charging a lot more, and yet people go to them first. And that's part of why, because when we set our rates too low, we inadvertently tell people we're not as good. And the reality is that, culturally, we equate cost with value. We assume that the more expensive service provider is a better service provider. The more expensive pair of shoes is a nicer pair of shoes. It's not always true, right? It's not rational, but it is how we see things. And so when we undervalue ourselves, the really serious clients who are willing to put the time and commitment and the monetary commitment into their animals, they just look right past us. And so I think that's a really critical, piece in thinking about whether you're thinking about starting a business or you're thinking about taking the business you have to a new level. That's one of the biggest pieces to look at. And it's a scary piece. I've never talked to a dog trainer who wasn't terrified to raise their rates, but I can also tell you I've never talked to a dog trainer who, after they did, weren't thrilled and delighted, because you feel like, well, I'm not getting enough business now at this low rate. If I raise it, it'll be worse, but it won't. It's every time you will see, it's just amazing. You raise your rates and more people want to work with you. And so it's things like that I just think are so critical, because we're not business minded, because we're altruistically minded. We make these kinds of mistakes that are just so easily sidestepped right from the beginning.
That's super interesting. Why do you think people, dog trainers and other animal trainers, undersell themselves?
We love dogs. We love them a lot. We feel guilty about taking money to do something that we feel so passionate about. I think we also, the entrepreneurial stuff feels really kind of distasteful to us, partly because we love dogs so much and we're doing this out of a passion. And so it just feels somehow dirty. It feels just, the same sort of feelings we have around selling ourselves, around marketing ourselves, I think come into play with the finances too. And we care a lot. And so we take on all this worry, we take on all this responsibility for, what people might or might not be able to afford. And the reality is that, people will pay for what they value. And you are going to have better outcomes. You're going to be much more likely to help a dog whose family has said, I am willing to spend money on this. I'm willing to pay for this. You think about, how often do you follow free advice, especially if the advice is challenging? It just makes it a lot harder to do. And so one of the things that we really try to teach is that it's not just okay to charge professional rates. And it's not just good for you, it's actually good for the dogs. The reality is you are going to have more clientele, and the clientele who come to you are much more likely to be compliant. They're much more likely to follow through on that advice because they had to pay something for it. And I think part of the worry we have is we want to help everybody, and we're worried that if our rates are too high, we're not going to be able to help people who don't have a high socioeconomic status. And we find that just not to be true. It's really interesting. But when you have high rates, we talk to our clients who have raised their rates, and it's not their clients aren't just the wealthy. It doesn't work that way, because you think about dog training, it's not an ongoing cost. It's a fixed cost. It's a one-time, for however long you need it, but it's just it's this finite period of time that you're paying for training. And what we find is it's really interesting. Our clients will have people who are very wealthy and who can clearly afford their services decide they're too expensive, and then they have people who are really stretching to afford their services decide that it's absolutely within their budget. It's not about how much money clients have; it's about how they prioritize their animals. Do they see their animals as part of the family? Is the problem something that they're worth spending, that they are willing to spend money to fix? And so I think we need to set aside all of the sort of responsibility we take onto our shoulders about other people's finances, and we need to take a professional approach to the work that we do. If you think about what it takes to become a truly gifted, skilled, experienced dog trainer, it's a phenomenal input of time and energy and effort and practice and learning. And this is a professional knowledge and skill set. And people pay professional fees for all other sorts of professional knowledge and skill sets like that. We need to start seeing ourselves differently. There's always going to be somebody who tells you you're too expensive. That's just not the right client for you. You need to set your rates at a level that A, is actually sustainable for you financially, and B, calls you out as a high-level pro. Otherwise, you will only get calls from people who are only willing to do training if it's cheap and easy. And we know that training is not easy, and it certainly shouldn't be cheap.
All right. So anyone who wants to become an Animal Training Academy member, join now, because I'm likely to triple my prices in the next couple of months.
I love it.
So you said it's about how the family prioritize their problem, and if they have a problem and they think you can fix it, they're going to pay for it, right?
Absolutely. You think again about, it's so interesting to me. You look at the trainers in any community who are charging the most and getting the most business and doing it's often the traditional trainers, and not because and I don't think it's a methodology issue. It's not because the clientele in the area have sought out, hey, I want to use an e-collar to train my dog, or although you guys, I say e-collar because of course in the United States we have not managed to ban them. It's not because people wake up and say, well, I want to solve this problem and I want to use harsh methods to do it. They wake up and they say, I want this problem solved. And they start looking around and they see the traditional trainer. He's charging professional level rates. And we see the positive reinforcement trainers charging less than professional rates. And so we make this immediate assumption that the one must be better than the other. And then also a lot of this is about marketing message, and it's about the way we provide our services. Traditional trainers tend to say things like, I'm going to make this better for you. I'm going to fix this. And they sometimes cross a line into very unethical guarantees. But I want you to contrast that with what we say. Our marketing message is usually some version of give me money and I'll give you a bunch of homework to do. If you don't do your homework, you're not going to see change. It's a really unpalatable marketing message. And I think we are very, very right to avoid making any kind of specific, behavioral guarantees. But it's crazy for us not to say, we can make this better. We can help you, and we can make your life with your dog better. We have to, I mean, if we can't do that, we shouldn't be offering our services if we don't believe we can do that. And so we have to rethink our marketing message to be about relief from, whatever has sent somebody to a dog trainer. We have to rethink our marketing messages to be about benefits, about outcomes, about what, how the people's lives are going to be better because they've worked with us. And then we have to be willing to provide an actual professional service. And I think one of the reasons that it is so challenging as a dog trainer to make a good living is because we provide a service under a very broken model. We have inherited this model where we ask for money in order to talk to somebody for an hour and turn them into a dog trainer, and that is just a uniquely broken proposition. Again, thinking about the number of hours and the effort that the average dog trainer goes through to build the skill set they have, to think that we can go in for an hour once a week and impart the knowledge and skills and the drive and motivation on top of that for people to do the work that's necessary to change their dog's behavior is just not reasonable. We set ourselves and we set our clients and we set the dogs up for failure by insisting that they learn how to train the dogs themselves. We set our businesses up for failure because, although it's hard for us as dog trainers to understand, the vast majority of dog lovers don't want to be dog trainers. And we need to stop judging them for that. The vast majority of parents do not homeschool their own children. It doesn't mean that they're not dedicated parents. We have teachers to educate kids. We have lawyers to argue cases. We have doctors to administer medical treatment. We have plumbers to fix pipes. Dog trainers should train dogs. It shouldn't be this weird notion that we're stuck with, that a dog trainer's job is to teach the clients to train their dogs. We really have to step back and examine that. I think we're failing ourselves, our industry, and the clients and the dogs by insisting on doing business that way. And it's one of the reasons that people go to traditional trainers, because the traditional trainer is willing to train the dog. And we need to step up and find ways to do that as positive reinforcement trainers too.
If we could train someone to train a dog in an hour, then I would not have a business.
We wouldn't be needed. Exactly. Exactly. And every time we insist on doing it that way and the client doesn't manage to get the job done, our goal is to improve the relationship between the dog and the client. That hurts that relationship. They've spent the money and the time and they still haven't seen the change they want. It doesn't bode well for the dog, and it doesn't bode well for our businesses either.
And we're not selling just a trained dog, are we? We're selling a peaceful home. We're selling higher social status because the person doesn't have to freak out when their friends come over because their dog's being reactive. We're selling a lot, aren't we?
It's really true. Peace of mind, relief, all those things that you just said is absolutely true. And, you look at the average dog trainer's website and it's, we're lecturing about methodology and we're lecturing about understanding dogs better. And we do a lot of inadvertent finger wagging, thinking, just not understanding what, as you say, what it is we're actually selling, right? We are selling a more harmonious life with dogs. You think about separation anxiety, for example. What it's like to live with a dog suffering from separation anxiety and the stress around that of not being able to go out to dinner without guilt, not being able to focus at work because you don't know what you're going to come home to, whether it's an angry neighbor or a landlord who's kicking you out or, ruined, rug in front of the door or door jam or whatnot. It's just, and all of the guilt and the worry and the stress and whatnot, we need to learn to speak to people about that, to speak with empathy. We understand what you're going through and we want you to imagine how it could be different. We can help. That we can imagine being able, to go to the grocery store without worry or guilt, and to be able to focus at work and to really, kind of spell these things out. And I think a lot of times we don't, because there's this worry that we're saying that we can fix it. I'm not talking about specific guarantees again, but if we are not willing to say, I can make your life with your dog better, we can make this better, we can improve this, then again, we have no business practicing if we don't think we can do that.
Yeah. And those things you just described, for example, maybe there's someone listening to this podcast that's worried about going to the grocery store. And to get rid of that stress and that anxiety, that is worth a lot of money.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you think about the amount of money that these poor folks are paying in, replacing furniture and floors and, and some of them, hiring babysitters or pet sitters, every day to handle this. The bottom line is that until we start valuing what we do and what we can accomplish for people, it's going to be very, very difficult to ask anyone else to value it.
And do you find that people find this mind shift? Is that a correct word to use? Maybe you've got a better word. Do you find that people find that quite challenging to make, or once you explain it to them, they get it? Or, I mean, for me, it's been a journey of a couple of years to really be able to articulate the benefits that we're talking about now to someone.
Yeah, I think the perspective shift comes easier and more quickly for some than others. I think for some people there's this sort of immediate, oh gosh, light bulb going on. As soon as you can see another way of thinking about it, you can take that path. For some of our clients, it's small steps. Certain things they're comfortable, doing first. They see some success with that. They see the change that it makes, and then they're able to jump all in. I think it also depends a little bit on when you encounter the ideas. We find, for example, as an example, the day training that we teach, which is sort of essentially board and train without the boarding, where the trainer is still meeting with the client once a week, but in between those weekly meetings, they're working with the dog themselves several times. So they're doing the training and then transferring those results. When we're working with someone who's just becoming a dog trainer, they've just graduated from training school and they're just starting their business, that idea is very comfortable because they haven't known something else. They haven't become accustomed to another way of doing things. When we work with clients who have been training for a long time, some of them have an immediate just rush of relief hearing the idea, this notion, God, for years I've really felt like something's wrong. This isn't working, and I thought it was me, and I felt so bad. And they're so excited to see a different way of doing it. And then it's just a matter of building those skill sets and getting comfortable with it and learning the structures and whatnot. For other trainers, it takes a little bit of time. There's some fear around. I think one of the things that can be a little bit nerve-wracking for experienced trainers with day training is that when you coach, when you work under the typical model of training the owner to train the dog, when the case doesn't go as well as you want, which is often the case in that model, there's a sense of disappointment and frustration and whatnot. But there's also this sort of sense of, well, it's easy to blame the client, right? They weren't compliant. They didn't follow through. They didn't do their homework. They didn't spend as much time. They didn't follow my instructions. And when it's our turn to go train the dog, there's this sort of sense of, performance anxiety. Well, if this doesn't go well, it's on me. But I think that very, very quickly trainers get over that. They realize how much farther they can take a dog and how much faster they can take that dog far because they know what they're doing. Spending a few hours, and we actually did a small research project on this back in 2009. And the results were just off the charts. How much farther a dog trainer can get a dog spending just 3 hours a week with the dog than the client can living with it all week, because we know how to use that time effectively.
Really great information. I think there's going to be people listening to this podcast that are just going to be going, holy.
I think another piece of this too, is just one part of our mission is one part of our mission, as I said, is to see positive reinforcement dog trainers be really successful, because it means we're helping more dogs. Part of that is keeping dog trainers in the game, is combating burnout. And I think a big part of burnout, a big contributor to burnout, is financial stress. But another really big contributor to burnout is not feeling efficacious, not feeling like we're helping as much as we mean to help, right? So every time we have a case that we have to think about, gosh, I know that we could have done so much more. We could have done so much more, and that just that frustration and disappointment and sometimes heartache that we haven't been able to. It's one of the things I love about day training, is because it allows the trainer to really do what they can do, instead of hoping that the client will follow through. And one of the things we found in the research project and that we certainly hear anecdotally from clients as well, but that client compliance goes up. It to a great degree solves client compliance issues because clients are so much more willing to do what they're asked to do to protect the results that have been attained for them than they are to do the work of attaining the results themselves. It's just too hard. It's just more than it's more than they bargained for. And so, but when you change the dog's behavior and you show them that change, their motivation to learn what they need to learn to maintain it is very high. And so I think that's something that is, it's just a really critical piece too. And I think there's, as we all know, there are so many things that even inside the R+ community that, we have all sorts of things we disagree on. But I think this one thing that we can all kind of get around is that, ultimately what we're trying to do is to keep dogs in their homes and to make those homes as positive as possible, right? We tend to talk a lot about, improving the relationship or the bond between the client and the dog. And I have to tell you, if that's really what you want to do, the fastest way to improve the relationship between the client and the dog, to improve the way the client looks at the dog, is to change the dog's behavior. And as dog trainers, we can do that quickly and effectively. And if we do that part, you'll see that the client is much more willing to change on their end. They're much more willing, to live up to their end of the equation as well.
So for those listening, this might be really hard to swallow, but what you have to do is put your prices up and train more dogs.
That's really it. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds scary, but it works every time. And I'll tell you, the higher your prices are, the more business you will have. Wow.
That's a really mind-shifting thought.
We hear it all the time. I just got an email yesterday from a woman who had hosted me, brought me out to the UK for a series of talks, and then started working with us and implementing what we were teaching. And I just got an email from her yesterday saying, she had set this, she had this monetary goal that she'd been trying to reach, this yearly goal she'd been trying to reach, since she started her business, and she'd never been able to reach it. And she was just looking at the last 11 months of her income, and she has doubled what she had hoped to make. And a big part of that was, she got bold and raised her rates and changed the way she was providing her services. And she, like anybody else, was really nervous about doing it. But it makes a tremendous difference.
We're going to move on now to build upon everything you've just said and to get dog trainers potentially and animal training professionals and dog walkers and anyone in a business or thinking about starting a business to do with animal management about themselves. What kind of characteristics do you think are important for us to work on and are important to help set ourselves up for success? I feel like that's a terrible way of wording it, but hopefully you understand the question.
No worries. One of the things that's so interesting to me is that when we started, we had some questions. We wondered how much we really could help. One of the big questions in my mind was, if you're not a natural born salesperson, right? If you're not one of those people who comes out of the womb just, ready to sing your own praises and really bold, fearless salesperson, like, can you learn that? Do you have to have those kinds of characteristics up front? And I can tell you with a great deal of relief that it turns out that no, you don't. You really can. You can learn skills behind it, especially the kind of sales processes we teach anyway, because we don't believe in hard sells, and we don't. We're supposed to be building relationship and being authentic, and we want our clients and students to be able to be really authentically true to who they are. And I say all that just to say that we don't have to have sort of specific kind of personality characteristics to be successful as an animal business owner. I think just really tapping into the natural passion that we have for the work that we do and being willing to siphon off some of that passion to learn things that we're less comfortable about. I mean, that's really the thing is, if you're a dedicated learner and you're willing you're willing to stretch a little bit and experience a little bit of discomfort to learn something new, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that learning how to run a business is not at all as uncomfortable or horrible or intimidating as I think we often come into it thinking. One of the things I hear a lot when I travel outside the United States, and I've encountered this everywhere in Australia and the UK and Chile and just anywhere I've gone, is this sort of sense of, it's so easy for you guys in the US because you're all, entrepreneurial anyway, and we're just not like that. And it's funny to me. It's actually a real misconception. Yes, there is absolutely an entrepreneurial spirit in the United States, but the vast majority of people in the U.S. do not own businesses and are as profoundly uncomfortable with the idea of selling and marketing and pricing and talking about money and all those sorts of things as people anywhere else are. I mean, as I said, earlier, it's a true story. I mean, I loved camping and crafts, but I really did quit the Girl Scouts because I just couldn't stand knocking on people's doors. And I believed in the product. Thin Mints are yummy. They're fantastic, but it still felt just awful to, put myself out there in that way. But I think that I think the characteristic really is the ability to dig deep, to take a really deep breath and say, I want this badly enough that I am willing to go and develop some new skill sets to have it. And I think that when that happens, that kind of that bravery, even if it's most of our clients, they're really nervous to start working with us in the beginning. There's this fear of, I'm going to be asked to do things I'm not comfortable doing. And I think, it's the bravery to go in and find out and to realize that, all of this is stuff that can be done in a really, really ethical and authentic and caring and empathetic way. You really can run a thriving business that is ethical and true to who you are. It's just about, I guess, having the guts to give yourself that gift.
So listening to you say all of this stuff, the thought, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, comes to mind.
It's true. But at the same time, I hope that I'm making clear it's nowhere near as hard as you may think it is. It really is doable. It really is achievable. The vast majority of our clients, like I said, they were not entrepreneurial by nature. The idea of running a business was scary and intimidating, and I really do think that if there'd been other alternatives, most of them would have chosen. If there'd been jobs available, for example. So, yeah, I mean, it's not you just snap your fingers and suddenly be successful. But I want people to understand that it's absolutely achievable, and you don't have to have been born with business superpowers to do it. It's just a matter of being willing to take that passion and apply it to to seek the education and to put some of that same passion toward learning the business side as you do the dog side, even if it's not as interesting to you. I totally get that, right? I mean, I totally get that. Listening to me talk about business is nowhere near as exciting as listening to someone talk about aggression or separation anxiety. It's just, there are very few of us who geek out on the business side of things. But it's incredibly empowering. And what it does do is allow you to put that passion you have for dogs to full use. So I really think that the big thing here is to push through, any fear or worry that you have. If this is really what you want to do for a living, to understand and to know that it is possible.
So the challenges aren't so much going and learning about the business side of things. It's more about potentially overcoming mental hurdles.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that you have to get through the mental hurdle in order to give yourself the push to go and do the work and to do that learning and to build that skill set. But if you think about it too, most of the dog trainers I know, as I said, you've come from some other career first, right? You've done, at least one, if not two or three things before. And at some point, there was this moment where your brain shifted from, well, I love dogs, but I really can't do that. It's not practical. It's never going to work. And there was this mind shift where you said, you know what, I'm going to go do it. And you spent the money to go to school. You spent the time to learn the craft and to to build the knowledge set. And it's that sort of thing. It's that moment of just saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And what I think you'll find is that although there's some work to be done, there's no doubt about that. It's not as impossible or as difficult or as challenging as you might think, and the resources are there to help you and support you, and to make it as enjoyable, a process and learning experience as possible.
Yeah, well said. And moving forward, we're going to talk about marketing and the importance of education, but we've covered that pretty well. One other area we discussed, including in this episode, though, was about getting people to think what specifically they want their business to be about, and about the idea of specializing and niche opportunities. Can you talk about this for the listeners of the show and explain what that means?
Absolutely. A lot of dog trainers are sort of jack of all trades, right? You take any kind of case, puppy training, basic manners, various behavior issues, etc., and that's perfectly fine. One thing to think about, though, is taking on an area of specialization or a niche or a niche. We have an ongoing debate at dogbiz about pronunciation of that word, so I'll just use them both, cover all bases. And so, if you have a specific area of interest, that often can really help build a business more quickly, to become known in your area as the go-to person for that specific thing. Some of the kinds of areas of specialization or niches that can be particularly powerful are things like puppy training, certain behavioral issues. You can be just a behavior specialist where you just take on difficult behavior issues in general. You can also drill down more specifically. Things like leash reactivity, for example, tends to be a very lucrative niche, especially in dense urban areas. Separation anxiety is another one, and human aggression is another one as well. The kinds of cases that either are very, very common and prolific in your area, like dog-dog leash reactivity or aggression, or the kinds of cases like human aggression or separation anxiety that many trainers are not comfortable taking. What happens, there are a couple things that happen when you have a niche. One is it makes your marketing easier because you can be much more direct and specific about it, both in terms of online marketing, but also your on-the-ground community marketing. And the other thing that happens in making your marketing easier is that it increases the likelihood of business by referral. So, for example, if you're one of the only trainers in your area who take separation anxiety cases, it's really easy to go to all the other trainers, even if you live in an area where trainers don't tend to be as open and collegial with each other. You're able to let people know that you take this on, so that when somebody decides that they don't want a case, they know exactly who to send it to. And so it can make marketing and sort of building a name for yourself a little bit more easy. It's not something that you have to do, but if you have a particular area of interest or a particularly strong skill set, it's something that I would encourage thinking about. Particularly, sometimes as you're starting out. I mean, sometimes you really have a clear sense of what you want to do when you're starting, but especially for those of you who have been training for long enough to kind of see the landscape of your area, to understand it, to know what you're particularly good at, what kinds of cases you really enjoy and that fuel you, to not be afraid to switch your business model and say, you know what, this is what we're going to start doing now. We're really going to put an emphasis on this, and it's not going to be just one more thing that we do. It's an interesting thing, but drilling down that way often will increase business because, as I said, you become known as the go-to for that.
Yeah, so it's potentially got the same impact as raising your prices. You might actually, by doing less, get more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With the caveat, of course, that you have to do the marketing. You can't just make the change and then not let anybody know that it's happening. But yeah, if you do your due diligence with marketing, it absolutely can have that same kind of impact of significantly increase, because you're not just one more dog trainer who does it all, right? You're really differentiating yourself in a very powerful way, and it's easier to build a reputation as an expert in one thing than across the board. And not that can't be done too, but and again, I don't want to make it sound like you have to have a niche to be successful, because that's not the case. But it can definitely speed things up.
When I first got started, I kind of felt that there was a lot of really great trainers who didn't pursue their passion because they sucked at marketing or they were scared of marketing. Whilst there were people that I wouldn't personally say or recommend as trainers that were really good at marketing, that were doing really well. And so it is, I'm just reflecting on my own journey and everything you've shared with us over the last hour or so. Is and to additionally build upon your last response to a query I gave, is marketing one of the main factors to success?
It really is. I mean, it's an absolutely key factor. If you want to help dogs, you have to have human clients who will bring you dogs. And if you want to have human clients who will bring you dogs, they have to know you exist, and they have to be convinced that you're the right match for them. And that's just the bottom line. I mean, if you're doing this as a hobby and you don't need to make money, and it's just sort of I'll just take a case here and there when it comes to me, then not marketing is fine. But if this is something you really mean to do, either as a strong secondary revenue source for yourself, or as your primary way to make your living, and regardless of whether you need the money, if you want to have an impact on as many dogs' lives as possible, marketing is just absolutely key. And as I said earlier, I encourage you to just reframe the whole concept of it. I'm getting to a point where I almost don't even want to use the word anymore, because I think it has all of this kind of negative, icky, dirty connotation, and it doesn't have to. I mean, like I said, we really teach a form of marketing that's all about community education, and especially for our clients who are profoundly uncomfortable with marketing, we say, don't even think about it that way. You are just doing projects to serve your community. These are community service, community education projects, and how cool that people will find out about what you do while you do it. That's, we just really look to reframe it, because one of the things too about dog training, if you think about it, we all want to have the widest impact possible, right? We want to help the most dogs' lives we can. But dog training is not a volume game. You can only train a certain number of dogs in any given week. I mean, that we have time constraints on what we can accomplish. And so what I love about this approach to marketing is that, while we're helping our clients to get the paying clients that are going to sustain them, they are helping their communities by putting out a lot of really fantastic educational information about dogs and dog behavior and dog training, so that they're having that much larger an impact, beyond the lives of the people who come forward and choose to pay them for their services. They're helping other dogs too. And so it's phenomenally key. I mean, you cannot have a successful business without doing it. We haven't been able to come up with a way to help our clients sidestep it all together, but it doesn't have to be a distasteful, uncomfortable endeavor. It can be an empowering one, and it can be one that you can feel truly good about, that can really, actually be part of the mission that's driven you to do this work in the first place.
And in 2018, and because you've been going for 15 years now, are you finding that with regards to the education and the community stuff you were talking about, that you've had a movement towards online stuff, or are you still getting really great results from just doing live stuff in community, or a mixture of both, or how's that changed over time?
Yeah, it's a mixture of both. One of the things one of the things that we've definitely seen over the last few years, one of the things we've really had to push through is that I think, with the emergence of social media and social media and online marketing, dog trainers started to kind of get this notion that, okay, I don't have to, I'm doing my marketing because I'm doing social media and I don't have to do that other stuff anymore. And that's just not true. I mean, it's a terrible mistake to make. If you read social media marketing gurus, they will tell you that, that social media marketing has to be one aspect of your marketing plan. For the vast majority of businesses in most industries, doing marketing solely online is not going to get the job done. And that's certainly the case in our industry. It's so critical to have that community presence, that on the ground presence. And the other thing to think about in our industry too. So in any marketing, you think of marketing as a three-legged stool. You have three audiences that you're marketing to. You're marketing to referral sources. You're marketing to the general public, and you're just the pool of potential clients out there. And then there's retention marketing to people who already know you, current and past clients, people who have already become, fans or followers or whatnot. When you're just getting started, and whether you're literally just starting a business now, or whether you have a 3 or 4 or 5 year old business but haven't done much marketing and don't have a lot of brand awareness in your area, when you rely on the one leg of the stool, when you rely on social media marketing, you're really only doing retention marketing. Unless you are well established and have, a large following, who's reading your blog post, who's reading your Facebook page other than your friends and family, right? I mean, it's not, people don't know to go look at your Facebook page. You have to do something for people to then decide they want to follow you. And so that on the ground community marketing is so critical in order to see any purchase later on in the online marketing that you do. And so it's certainly, certainly a part of a marketing plan, but it can't take the place of a marketing plan. It's one part of a more comprehensive approach to the task. You were asking me about sort of changes over the 15 years that we've been doing this. We're celebrating our 15th birthday a little bit later this year, and it's been a really amazing ride. And one of the things we've definitely seen change, particularly here in the U.S. where we've been operating for 15 years, is there is a perspective shift. I mean, more and more now, dog trainers understand that the business piece is a really critical aspect to their success as dog trainers. And in the beginning when we first started, we had to, it was impossible to get conferences to let us speak. It was really challenging to get articles into journals. It was really difficult to get the word out there because, it's just not sexy. Marketing is not as exciting as aggression. It just isn't. Whereas, now 15 years later, we have dozens of invitations every year to conferences all around the world. And I think it's such an incredible shift to see, not necessarily that it's become any sexier, anyone's any more excited about it than they used to be. But there's definitely so much more a sense of taking this beyond sort of a hobby approach and really thinking about, about making as wide a difference in the world as we can. And so it's just so wonderful to see, for example, 15 years ago, you inviting me to speak about this on your podcast wouldn't have happened. Just people weren't thinking about those sorts of things back then. And so it's exciting. It's really exciting to sort of see our industry, slowly emerging, slowly professionalizing, not just on the business end, but on the education end too, on the, in terms of credentialing, in terms of, just really, taking this more professional approach to every aspect of what we do.
Yeah, I think we should be excited about it. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I think it's pretty sexy.
we do try to sex it up as much as we can. Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that always makes me laugh, but always means a lot to us is that we often will see we've come and done a seminar or a workshop or spoken at a conference, and the evaluations are always kind of funny. The sort of like, well, I almost didn't go because I just I thought it would be boring, or I really wanted to go watch so and so speak about separation anxiety or dog aggression or whatever. But it really actually I was really surprised. It was actually sort of interesting and entertaining. Like there's this notion that, oh my gosh, I was ready to be put to sleep by this, and so yeah, it is. It can be sexy, right? If we just if we let it.
Well, you're good at articulating it, so maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe you're bringing sexy back, to quote Justin Timberlake.
I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that particular sentence.
Hey, you might have already answered our final question then, but potentially you want to build upon it. Moving forward over the next 5 to 10 years in the dog business, animal training business world, where do you want to see this going? Where do you want to be in 10 years from now, looking back at this conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sorry I jumped in and anticipated a little bit there. So everything I just said, and but then also, on this topic of professionalizing the industry, we are not a true profession yet, in terms of having having a body that that oversees the work that we do and requires us to do it to a certain set of both skill and ethical standards. That is something that I think we are sort of slowly, inexorably marching toward, and I hope that is something that we do ourselves together collectively as an industry, rather than having it done to us. And I hope that we're able to get that job done for ourselves. I love seeing the change in education. How back when I first started, it was really kind of optional. Whether you went and learned a scientific approach to dog training, or whether you just decided that a love of dogs and having lived with them all your life was qualification enough, And so I love to see the emergence of programs like yours and how many more dog trainers are choosing that path. I think that is is a really exciting thing, because it means that we can do our work with greater efficacy and greater ethical standards as well. And I do think that I think we'll continue to see this trend of being more mindful and paying more attention to the business side of things, so that we put ourselves in the best possible position to help the most number of dogs that we can. And I hope that trend continues, and I hope that we're able to to continue being part of the push for that at dogbiz. It's been an incredible 15 years, and I feel. We all feel, amazingly fortunate to be doing something that we love so much, and working with people who are so passionate about what they do. It's an honor to serve people who are out there every single day making dogs' lives better.
Yeah, and that's our joint mission, isn't it? At the end of the day,
it sure is.
And I was always inspired by Dr. Susan Friedman, who said to me when I first met her, changing the world one animal at a time. And I like to think here at Animal Training Academy, we're changing the world one podcast at a time. Getting this and I like
that's right.
I liked your input there about we hopefully are going to continue this great work that we're all doing as a community and be the drivers behind getting all of this stuff turned into a proper regulated profession. And hopefully we can get those e-collars banned over there. They're also, you mentioned that way earlier in the podcast, but I wanted to say this there because you can also buy them in New Zealand, but I also wanted to just build on previous podcast episodes and say, go Scotland and getting those e-collars.
Yes. Congrats over there. Fantastic.
Let's take it on US, New Zealand, and other countries. Well, fantastic. That's bringing us to the end now, Veronica. Thank you so much for sharing everything today. Before we wrap up, can you just, we've said it earlier in the episode, but just remind everyone listening where they can go to find more out about you, about dogbiz, and about what you're up to.
Yes, you can visit us at www.dogbizsuccess.com. That's where to find us, and you can learn all about the services that we do, provide, and the education, business tools, and whatnot. And there are a lot of free resources on the website as well. We have an enormous article archive just full of business articles specifically for dog professionals. And so that's a great place to start digging into these topics a little bit.
And you guys using social media?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. We're on Facebook, and you'd think I'd be able to rattle that off the top of my head. It should just, I think our Facebook page is just DogTech, DOGTEC, which is our old name in the States, and you should be able to find us there.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure to link to all of the stuff in the podcast right up to make it super easy for all of you that end up on that page. Veronica, from myself and on behalf of everyone listening, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and hang out with us and share your knowledge and experience. It's really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. It was a real pleasure.
I'm inspired, and I know that I'm going to be marinating all of this in my brain over the next few days as I think about my own journey. So heartfelt appreciation from myself as well. As everyone listening, we do, of course, appreciate you tuning in today and hanging out with us. If you have enjoyed the episode and you are interested in carrying on these conversations about most positive, less intrusive ways of influencing behavior, then as mentioned at the start of the episode, the ATA, the Animal Training Academy community, is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn all about how you can connect with like-minded, positive reinforcement-based animal trainers from around the globe. Whether you train or are thinking about training dogs, cats, birds, pets, zoo animals, vet clinics, zoos, kennels, wherever behavior management is required, you will love all the different ways you can join in: forums, WhatsApp chats, private Facebook group, live web classes. There's something there for absolutely everyone, and we are looking forward to having you join the family. That's it for this episode, though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much for listening, everyone. But for now, you'll hear from us again soon. Toodaloo.